Welcome to episode 224 of Saturday Football Uncensored, brought to you by Saturday Down South and Texas Pete. On today's episode, we recap bowl season and the playoff games. You can find this show on our website, SaturdayDownSouth.com, and Apple and Spotify. Don't forget to join us for the live recording of the show every Sunday at 8 Eastern Time on the Saturday Down South YouTube page. And lastly, go share the pod with your friends. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Saturday Football Uncensored, brought to you by Saturday Down South and Texas Pete. I'm your host, Tyler Huck, and with me as always, my co-host, Chris Marler. Chris, we have reached the top. Not our teams, but you are muted, so I cannot hear you.
It's a metaphor, Tyler. It's a metaphor.
Yeah. How you feeling today?
There's a lot of emotions I think that go into what happened yesterday. Less about the game, I think. But like yesterday after the game, I was bummed, but I was less upset about the game than I was about just some other stuff that I'll get into. But then today when I woke up, everything hurts and I'm dying. Because then today I did a pretty good job. I felt like immediately kind of accepting the loss, and it kind of felt like for a lot of reasons, which we'll get into. But I felt like I kind of accepted it and was good on it. And I was fine with the play call, Tyler. I was fine with the play call in the last play. What I was not prepared for was then seeing it being broken down from like the Zapruder film. And realizing there was yet another bad snap, and then also Milrose still probably could have walked in if he cut it left. So that part stings a lot. And then, before we get into it, the thing that sucks the most is that you had a touchdown lead with fucking 4 minutes to go in.
Yeah. So and honestly, and for those that are listening on the pod, I'm recording at my office, so if you hear some background chatter, that is why, and I will try to mute as much as I can. I thought McCarthy looked pretty poor throughout most of the game until that final drive. I mean, he just turned it on.
Okay, hold
all
on.
things considered, first half, I didn't think he was great. Definitely second half a little bit better. They were better on third down than I expected them to be. But he was just good enough. I mean, the run game actually all night wasn't great for Michigan. And honestly, man, sure you probably it wasn't Bama's best game, but I'm sure you probably don't want to hear this, but I don't think Michigan really played their best game either. Obviously, clearly on special teams.
Did you watch the game?
Yeah, I watched it
because I saw your tweet in the third quarter, this back and forth, and it was about how this game sucks. Or this game, it was some gif of it stinks, and I was like, am I watching this game?
I felt like neither team played well.
So I think, all right, let's.
I mean, yeah, it ended up being a close game, and of course, the back half of the game made it a much better game just because it was close. But I thought neither team really played that great. I thought it kind of felt sloppy in a way. A lot of drop passes.
There was a lot of sloppiness from Bama, especially. I thought Michigan played really well. I mean, you can say what you want to about the special team stuff, but I think that what I was mainly surprised about with some of the reactions I was seeing was it didn't feel like the reactions were realistic or they felt like they were the reactions were happening because people did not want to see Alabama in the playoff, and I fully understand why. I fully get that. We've said it on the spot. I've said it. You've said it. Still think Florida State should have gotten in. That whole thing sucks, and it's a shit situation, and all that. You had the number 1 versus number 4 team in the country with two of the best defenses, the number 1 ranked defense and everything across the board. I've given you guys all the stats that Michigan had. I thought it was going to be that kind of game, and then it turns into an instant classic because you go to overtime. Anybody that watched that game and was upset with how it wasn't. They thought it wasn't a good game. I feel like you must not like college football because that's everything you would want. It's two blue bloods. It comes down the wire. It goes into overtime in the greatest venue in the entire fucking sport. I just was kind of shocked by that. But getting into the game, like the game starts, I'm all fired up. I felt pretty good. I was a little bit nervous beforehand because I felt good about it all 3-4 weeks leading up to it, and I kept thinking that line was going to drop. I just kept thinking that line was going to drop, and it didn't at all. And it felt like Vegas was just begging people to bet on Bama. And when
I think it ended up at 2.5, didn't it, before the game?
Yeah, it moved to a full point the day of, and I was just kind of shocked by that, and I got like that made me really nervous. That made me very nervous leading up to the game. But then I kept thinking about it too, and I wrote all these down. Like if you look at just the way Vegas has been on this year, they've been off so much. Like they were 6-1 underdog to Georgia, they win by 3. They were a 1-point favorite against or a 3-point favorite against LSU, they won by 14. 10-point favorite by Kentucky, they win by 28. 14.5 by Auburn, they win by 4 and should have lost. Like so, I felt like Vegas, as right as they always are, they've been off on Bama this year. And then the game starts. Also, maybe the easiest bet imaginable to make from a prop bet, Tyler. First series for both teams ending in a punt.
Yeah,
free money. But what I was expecting was I knew that Michigan was a good team. As much as I went out of my way to shit on them, like I knew that they were a good team. I did not think that they were good in the ways that they were. Like when the game started, the first 5 minutes was a lot of fun, man. I was having a lot of fun the first 5 minutes. The first play of the game, I thought was the interception return. That and then you get a 3 and out, and like the defense looked good, and you end up giving up 2 sacks in the first 3 snaps of the game, but you get the ball at the 30-yard line, right? Get yourself. So that part was exciting, but then after Bama scored in the opening, after their first touchdown, they're up 7-0, felt really, really good. Felt really, really good because I just thought that that's what we were going to do. And I thought the points would be harder to come by than they were. And, all of a sudden you look at the first 5 minutes, you've already seemingly dominated the game. Michigan went right back down the field and answered, And they did it in a way like the play calling and play design was so impressive to me and different than what I thought was coming. I mean, like the way they used Corum, the way they like the misdirections and like the counter, like toss, like the way they had him come out of the backfield, like where we had to have somebody in coverage on him, like that led to the touchdown. I was really impressed with the way they schemed their play calling on the offensive side of the ball. That I did not expect. And JJ McCarthy, the first half, you said that he didn't play that well. He was on fire.
No, I never thought I saw anything from him in the game that was like, man, this guy's like anything special. I mean, I thought he was good late, but that was just my takeaway. I mean, I realized that 17 and 27, 221, 3 TDs for the game. Yeah, that's obviously the 3 TDs is great, but I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I thought he had
because they couldn't run the ball. I mean, until the very end of the game, Corum broke off some runs late, but I mean, he finished with 83 yards, which on 20 carries isn't fantastic. So they needed McCarthy to carry him. I mean, I thought his overall his stats were pretty good, but I don't know. It shocked me how poorly Milroe played in the pass game.
I mean, at one point he had 6 dropbacks and had four sacks. But I think what was most concerning for me was after the first play of the game, you get an interception and it gets overturned immediately. You get a stop and you get that muff punt and they scored on a 34-yard run with 3 minutes to go in the half. Alabama had 38 total yards and they had a 34-yard touchdown run. Like what was scary for me was that whenever Bama's offense was on the field, they had it wasn't like they were missing. They weren't able to run the football. They weren't able to get anybody open. They couldn't do anything. And Michigan was suffocating and running a cover zero and just breaking the house. And Milroe had nowhere to go. The offensive line looked completely lost. I don't remember any plays developing. I just don't remember any plays even developing. from either of them. So, like, I know there was Milroe took a lot of criticism because of how bad he was in the passing game. Keep in mind that's like the best pass defense in the entire country. And I thought that for the first 28 minutes of the half, what was like scary was that you were tied in the game 7-7, and I think it ended up being 13-7 right before the last possession that Bama had before halftime. But up until that point, Bama did nothing on offense where it was like it felt like they should have been dominated. They were lucky to be that close. And like I said, Michigan scores. They were able to move the football effectively. They were able to convert on some third downs and fourth downs. I tell you what, not even like converting on third downs. Anytime it was like second, third, and long, they were able to either convert or get within like a 1 yard fourth down play where they can go for it. And there were some, like, I wouldn't say backbreaking plays by the defense, but they did not do a good job of getting off the field. They looked lost, especially the linebackers in the first half looked lost in coverage, which that's what I wasn't expecting. And I remember Robbie Buffett, one of my good buddies, Bama fan, texted me before half and like sky is falling. You know, you're down 13-7. We have to score here. And I kept thinking, like, we don't need to score, but you absolutely need to get some sort of sustained drive going into halftime to have any sort of confidence, and then hope they make adjustments. And they did. They finally got it going in the pass game a little bit. And they go into half down 13-10. Now, the second half, Tyler, I kept thinking hopefully they're going to do what they've done all year, which is make halftime adjustments. Because at halftime, they had been completely outcoached, outplayed, and outschemed. And I kept thinking, like, you know, hopefully they'll just make adjustments like they've done all season. They're a second half team a lot of times. And they did. The offense looked totally different. It almost felt like they had like slow played them, like a rope-a-dope type thing, where it's like all of a sudden the offense is opening up. We're being able to do more stuff. Like we're being more creative. Like all of the plays had way more success than they did in the first half, obviously. And then on defense, they held Michigan to on their first 24 play. First 12 plays of the second half to just 24 yards. They took full control of the game. And I will say that at one point, I forgot if I think it was the third quarter or fourth quarter, Bama pulled up. They were up by 4. They got a stop, and Bama had the ball at midfield, and they were driving. And it felt like for the first time all game, they're going to go down here and they're going to put these fucking people away. And that's what I said all the time. Like what do elite teams do? When you get the chance, you put your fucking foot on someone's throat and you don't let up. And Milroe rolls out to his left. He's got a guy wide open in the flat, and he gets super indecisive. And like he's going to throw it, and then doesn't, and then he gets hit from like the side and fumbles. And just like that, I wouldn't say you lost all the momentum because the result.
Yeah, they didn't score off that, did they?
No, you got very lucky. They missed a field goal.
Yeah, that's right.
You dodged a bullet there, but at the same time, it really felt like a missed opportunity of being able to like here's one thing that really bothered me for most of the game. It was like even when Bama had a chance to flip the field, like you know what I mean, they couldn't even do that. But that turnover.
Well, they flipped the field. I felt like Bama's punt team, especially, really like that. When you say like when you watch the game, it felt like, especially in the first half, Michigan was dominating, and Bama was kind of should be happy where they were down 3.
Yeah,
I mean, I felt like if they didn't have that like extremely great punting night, like it could have been much worse.
right.
And Michigan was like the total opposite. Like the special teams yardage, I think, was like plus 54 in favor of Bama.
Yeah, I think that what was especially that last punt of the game.
Oh my god, dude! What went through your mind when he first muffed that? Because if they recover that in the end zone, I mean, the game's over basically.
I don't think I had words. I was so confused how it happened, and then also side note, Harbaugh.
Why are punt returners so bad these days?
I don't know.
I feel like people are just muffing punts everywhere now.
Bama's been really fortunate on that, but you know, back to like the fourth quarter, the way it was playing out. Like I didn't feel good in the first half at all. It felt like this. It wasn't like Bama wasn't playing well. It's like one of those games where like, oh, so and so, it's just their night, and like we can't do anything right. You were just being kind of, it felt like, dominated on the lines of scrimmage, and you were being outcoached.
I'll say in the first half, it never really felt like Bama's O-line was getting dominated like physically by Michigan. They just seemed confused.
Constantly.
Like it felt like Michigan was always having somebody wide open to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And they had 5 sacks in the first half and then 1 in the
5
second half,
sacks
right?
in the first half.
The sack rate was 21% for Michigan.
That's insane. Again,
so on 21% of pass plays.
6 dropbacks and 4 sacks for Milroe. That's why I was like it didn't feel like anything could happen. And it wasn't like those sacks where it was like it's his fault he couldn't should have thrown the ball away or whatever. It was just like they were on him immediately. Anyway, so you get to, I'm trying to think here. You get to the third quarter is scoreless, right? And you go into it's you're down 13-10 going into the fourth. But you score at the start of the fourth quarter, right? And it was like they were able to start converting passes. They were able to, the run game got going. And Justice Hayes.
That one pass by Milroe was an absolute dime to the sideline.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Which on who? To Bond?
I think it was Bond, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like an NFL, it was to the outside hash, just perfect pass. And that's what I felt. I was like, man, they are really starting to move the ball. Yeah, Justice Hayes looks great. He's going to be a really good player.
Yeah, I don't know why he just now got involved in the game. It was kind of odd, but it was good, I guess.
Especially because it's not like Bama's running back room was it normally is,
He had 21 carries the whole season. All of a sudden, he was involved. But again, it seemed like they finally turned the corner because remember at the start of the second half, by the way, Bama got the ball. They crossed midfield, and then you immediately had I think a bad snap or 2 sacks or something like that in a row, and so that momentum's gone. But they score, and it was they were finally able to start doing stuff in the run game. But they had time to throw, something had just clicked, and they had turned the corner. And again, up until this point, Tyler, Michigan had 12 plays for 24 total yards. They had 82 yards rushing at halftime, and with 4 minutes to go in the game, they had 80. And Bama gets the ball, and they go up 7. And I tell you what, man, Michigan's a really great team, and this Bama team's been flawed all year. But you had a touchdown lead with 4 minutes to go. And it wasn't like they had good field position or anything crazy like that. They had the ball at their own 25-yard line after kickoff. And Michigan went right down your throat, man. And the stat I saw that stuck out and hurt the most from looking at it was Alabama had allowed 24 yards on 12 plays in the first, 26 minutes of the second half. The final 10 plays over the last drive in overtime for Michigan, it was 10 plays for 100 yards. You had them where you wanted them, and the unit that has pulled through the most, the defense, it was on them. It was on them to win that game, and that part is still kind of shocking to me. You had no pass rush. You couldn't get to the quarterback. Only had 1 sack all night. Didn't get a lot of pressure. And again, kudos all this to Michigan. Michigan deserved to win that game. But the thing that I kept saying all year, and people got upset about how critical I was of this team, Tyler, but they just didn't consistently do things that elite teams do. At all. Like I said it, I feel like every other game, Bama would do something that elite teams just don't do. And it's, I know they won the SEC. I know they beat Georgia and all that kind of stuff, but they did a lot of stuff that elite teams that win championships don't do. And they were able to overcome a ton of it. But when you have a center that is not able to do the most basic part of his fucking job, which is snap the fucking football, and it's week 14, and you're still having those issues, that part was really, really frustrating. And I think that when they tied it up and Bama had to go to overtime, I did not feel good about it because I just kept thinking, I was like, they have a lot of momentum. They just drove right down your throats. And if they score first, I don't think Bama can score. It just they for whatever reason, the offense just looked lost after that. And sure enough, Michigan gets we win the toss, we defer. Michigan gets the ball, 2 plays, 25 yards, both run plays, right down your fucking throat. And Bama gets a first down and like has a chance, man. They have a chance. On 4th and 3, they ran they apparently it was supposed to be an RPO, but it wasn't. It was a design run play to Jalen Milroe up the middle. And I honestly, Tyler, I like the play call. I really do. He's
Yeah,
the
you
best
gotta in that moment. Yeah, he's the best playmaker on your offense. You gotta. If you'd be pissed if you're a Bama fan. If it's like a tight end out to CJ Deeper or whatever. Like, why are we doing that?
And
Put it in your playmaker's hands.
It's so easy to look at like hindsight's being 2020 and like what they should have done. Tana Reese sucks. And like, listen, like Bama deserved to lose that game. I don't know if the play calling was the main reason. And you can second guess that play call all you want. Jalen Milroe, if anything, deserved to have the ball put in his hands in that moment. And I did like that. Should you have maybe given him an option to the like run pass option, like where he rolls out as well and has some space? Maybe. But what broke my fucking will was not that they got stopped. It was an incredible game that, like, I hate to sound like an Auburn fan, but they fought till the end. But like when he got stopped, if the game was over and you realize the season's over and this incredible, crazy run that this very, very flawed team took us on all year was done. And then you see where the snap was from the center, the start of the play. And then you see like the right guard getting blown up. And then after all of that, you see, oh my God, he had a lane if he cut left and probably could have walked into the end zone. I think that this team was, if I'm being honest, like you could say that they not only didn't deserve to be there over Florida State necessarily, but it's kind of shocking that they even got like to the college football playoff this year. Like, so that doesn't necessarily make me feel a ton better because he still lost. But it kind of felt like, you play with fire at some point, you're going to get burned. And they had not gotten away with, they were able to overcome their own fucking flaws and inefficiencies so much over the year. And I feel like they finally caught up with them.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it was one of Saban's better coaching jobs, all things considered, because I mean, ultimately the lack of playmaking skill players on offense is kind of the head coach's issue. Like you got to have those guys in place, but given the roster and where it's at, to still be able to make the playoffs, I thought was a really good coaching job. And hey, I guess you get old Nick Saban back next year. Then he won't retire. He won't have the storybook ending.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part like sucks. I think it's like it was weird to me to see the general reaction from the other fans afterwards because I knew there was gonna be shit talk. I had to stand in the paint and take everything that Michigan fans gave me, deservingly so, because I was very vocal about that. And listen, I haven't given them enough credit, but like I could not have been more impressed with how good of a job they did from a coaching standpoint of how they prepared for Alabama. Mentor was awesome. Harbaugh was awesome. Like, think about the stuff that Michigan overcame in that game. Like the 2 muff punts, like the missed field goal, the
missed extra point.
The missed extra point. They should have never even been in the situation.
Right. They were horrific on special teams.
They were really bad. And I think that what they were able to do, again, man, like I said, they do what elite teams do. And that is when like they overcame adversity every time they had to have a play. And I think, it's easy to people I thought were very quickly to be armchair quarterbacks and break down how like these teams suck and this game sucks. Like, like this team should have been in or blah, blah, blah. I thought it was a really evenly matched game. I really was, as much as I've shit on Michigan, I was very impressed. I won't say blown away, but kind of blown away with how well prepared they were, how fundamentally sound they were. Like the penalties, like they I know what happened in special teams, but like that was a really, really impressive football team with some really good athletes. And when they needed it most, and again, down fucking 7 against a Nick Saban defense with 4 minutes to go, on the biggest stage of the year, and you go right down their throats. It was just an incredible job. So kudos to them. They deserve to win. Kind of going through just the emotions afterwards, Tyler. I don't know if I've been this bummed about a loss. It felt like maybe ever. Like I was devastated in 2016 against Clemson. That was awful. And I hate losing in general. This sucked for so many reasons. And I felt like I was going to fucking cry afterwards. Like not because they lost, but as soon as the game ended, it hit me. I was like, this has been the most enjoyable season as a fan that I've had in forever, because this team, you didn't have to take it for granted. And there were so many great moments and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not excusing the fact they lost or trying to have like a moral victory. It just going through the season and looking at all of the stuff that that 4th and 31, something I'll get to remember forever, right? Like the Tennessee comeback was fucking like the vengeful pettiness that I got to experience with that. The way they turned everything around from like the Texas loss to, into Ole Miss the second part of the season. It was a really, really fun team to watch. I don't know if I've ever been like more proud of a team, because I do think they had a lot to overcome. Even though you brought up the roster is still the number one ranked roster for whatever reason in college football. It was a great season, and it hit me all at once that not only is the season over, but like this has been the most rewarding season for me personally and professionally. I feel like we hit stride so much. I feel like I made so many changes that I've alluded to kind of in the off season. It has been the most enjoyable and rewarding year I've ever had in this job. And then realizing it was just over like that was that part sucked, because now you look at the off season, that part hit me like a ton of bricks. That sucked. But man, I thought it was a great game. I thought the best team won. I don't really have anything else outside of that.
Yeah, certainly can relate to really enjoying a season and having a heart-wrenching ending.
Okay. I got it. What do you want to talk about the shit talk from the other fans? We talked about Bama a ton, so we should probably take a break from it and talk about the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. But I still have some things to say.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about the Sugar Bowl, and then we'll get into kind of the remainder of the playoff or the bowls. This game was incredible. I knew, I think most people thought it would be high scoring, but Washington ends up winning 37-31 in a game where it really felt like Texas was kind of lucky to be in it at some points.
Yeah.
Michael Penix is incredible. Like,
dude,
it's hard. He looks weird throwing the ball. I don't know what it is about him, but
it's a sidearm, but it's lefty sidearm. It's like I don't know how to explain it, but it's weird.
Yeah, but dude, that guy throws absolute dots downfield. Like
any throw.
Yeah, his average depth of target is ridiculous. Like he's throwing it down the field, and the ball is on the money every time. That ball that he threw down in the red zone, where he just, it was a seed right in the middle of like three defenders, right to his tight end. It was just an incredible performance. I thought Ewers, for the most part, was pretty average until the end. Like he turned it on certainly at the very end, but I think he had like 96 yards passing going into like the fourth quarter or something crazy. Like,
so I was looking at this, and I the first half of this game, I was
you were
handling everything that I had to respond to with my own the consequences of my own actions on Twitter. And I just kind of thought that like Texas is like, I talk about all the time how we keep like dismissing and discounting how good Washington is. And of course I did it again, because I just thought Texas would win this game. I thought they were better on both sides. Washington was up 31-21 going into the fourth. You're right. Ewers at one point had. He was 10 of 20 for like 100 yards. Yeah. And he ended the game with 318 yards. And I told Tyler this off air. As soon as they recovered the onside kick, I went to bed and had no idea what unfolded. And I missed everything.
So essentially, first of all, like I felt like Washington never really should have been in this spot, because even as they were up 2 scores, they were throwing the ball on every down.
Mm-hmm.
And so they weren't really trying to kind of grind the clock out. which, I mean, I guess when you have Penix and those three receivers, which is by far the best receiving core when you talk about having three guys that are NFL guys.
Yeah.
Washington's
That's the thing
receivers.
people don't understand about Washington is that I think that we assume this is some like air raid system that they're only putting up these numbers because of the system. And part of that's true because they do throw the ball a ton, but they have dudes on that offense.
Oh, yeah. So they go, so when they finally get it to 37-31, they rightfully run the ball. And Texas only had 2 timeouts. So they stopped it twice, and then Washington runs it a third time. And Dylan Johnson, like their workhorse running back, like I don't know what happened. He was like writhing in pain on the field. It couldn't come off. And so there had to be an injury timeout. So instead of having the clock down to like 15 seconds, you punt that. There's like 10 seconds and they're down on the 10. You're suddenly punting with 50 seconds left, and then you run into the punt catcher.
Right.
So they immediately have the ball in like the 30 to start, and all they need a touchdown to win. And they get a huge play right off the bat to Jordan Whittington.
It's on third down.
Yeah, on third down, but like no time to come off the clock. There was still like 30 seconds left when that happened.
That's what I couldn't understand even watching back on the replay. It was like, how is time standing still right now? Like, what the fuck is going on?
I'm sure Kalen DeBoer felt that way.
Yeah.
And for a moment, it looked like Washington was going to have like an all-time just bad luck type thing happen. Because honestly, if the guy doesn't get hurt, first of all, he's probably going to be out for this Michigan game. Like he got hurt really badly. And you look at the box score, like nobody else really ran the ball for them. Right. So I don't know what they're going to do there. But they get down to the 12-yard line. They had 1st and 10 on the 12-yard line. And they had 4 downs to try to get in the end zone. Washington bucked up at the end. And this Washington team, that's the thing that I love about this matchup coming up, and we won't break the game down in this episode, but Washington has been tested in almost every game they've been in.
Yep. They are very much battle tested.
And now Michigan rose up to the challenge in the Bama game, but like to that point, they had no real challenges at all season.
Right.
Now to their credit, they rose up, but Washington is living in these games where it's just going to be close. And so, like I said, I think Michael Penix was incredible. He only behind Burrow for yards in a game in the playoffs, 430 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no picks.
Also behind Mac Jones in that list. Also, you see that Burrow was on there twice for the same playoff? That's ridiculous.
Stupid. You have, like, for a large part of the season, Washington didn't have Jalen McMillan, and he's clearly a big difference maker because you can't cover him, Adunze, and Polk. You just can't get all 3 covered. And so, man, Texas, a great year. Obviously, their trajectory is definitely up. But look, Washington, we at one point, I think we obviously backed off it at one point, but like we were both like, Washington's the best team in the country.
We had him at number 1 in the country early on, and I think that we also, at that part of the season when you haven't played as much competition yet, it's also easier to look at.
Yeah, and then you're like barely scraping by Arizona State, and there was like they barely scraped by Washington State. It's like, okay, that's why I thought Oregon was going to be a great bet.
Yeah, I mean they haven't had a double-digit win. Okay, think about this. I'm trying to pull up this out right now. Connor said it to me a million times. I probably should have had it memorized by now. They have not had a double-digit win since the Cal game, which was in the month of September on September 23rd. September 23rd. So they played 10 straight games. They've played 10 straight games, and they've all been close scores and stuff like that. And like, I don't think that's a situation where they're playing with fire. They are a team that is very veteran. They know how to win. One of the
they have the best O-line in the country.
They have Joe Moore Award. One of the things that I was surprised about the most, and this isn't like, I don't want to like be negative about the way the game played out and only have that be the takeaway, because I thought it ended up being a really good game. Texas put up 256 total yards in the fourth quarter and came storming back. Credit to them for not giving up. But the one thing that I think is going to sting. And when you look back at this one and like how did we fucking lose that game, or how did we not do this in this season? Steve Sarkisian, for as much as I've said over and over that I think he's the best offensive mind in all of college football and how great he is, and he's done a phenomenal job in year 3 at Texas. They are back. The 2 games they lost, Tyler, you look at the OU game and you look at Washington. That OU game, they had 2 different possessions inside the 5-yard line, and they were turned away. They had a goal line stand that they let happen in, like, I think the 3rd quarter against OU, where OU stopped them. You lose that game by 3 points, I think. And then in this game, now you could argue they shouldn't have been in it at any point, and they were very fortunate to even get down there. But you said first and goal from the 10, first and goal from the 12.
12, yeah.
And listen, he's had some weapons. He had weapons at Alabama with those receivers and everything like that. I don't want to say that this offense is as good as that one necessarily, but my God, man, if you're telling me that you have 3 plays, you're on the 12-yard line, and Steve Sarkisian has at his disposal Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, but probably would have thrown 2-3 times, Jatavian Sanders, Jordan Whittington, and Baxter running back. Like, kudos to Washington for getting the stop, but I think that's the part that's going to be like the toughest pill to swallow if you're a Texas fan or if you're Steve Sarkisian himself, because that's where you should thrive. Like, you had the game in your hands at that point and couldn't get it done.
It honestly, to me, when I was watching it, it felt like Florida State LSU last year went all the way up to like putting 1 second back on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, they're going to, and had they scored, it would have been tied and they would have to hit an extra point to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited for the Washington-Michigan game because Washington has the best offense in the country. Michigan has the best defense in the country. So it's going to be a very – and I think with Washington's O-line, they can stack up with the D-line of Michigan. And so it's going to be a fun game to watch. I think it's the best as far as if you're looking for outcomes in terms of enjoyable games. I think that's probably the best you could have gotten. Although these 2 teams playing each other was a great matchup as well.
I think that I said this going into the playoff. I know people were upset about who got in and why and all the reasons, and people are still clearly upset about that. And some people deserve to be upset, it's valid that they're upset. I get it. I said before though, I thought that this was the most evenly matched 4 teams across the board that we have seen probably in the entire 10 years of the playoff, and it played out that way. Bama and Michigan was a very, very evenly matched game. People call it sloppy all you want. So it was phenomenal. Overtime in the Rose Bowl, man. Like, and then you have this game, the way it played out in the Sugar Bowl with 2. Listen, only one of the brands is necessarily like a blue blood, but these are 2 of the best teams in the country. And I thought it was I thought the semifinals were arguably the best, besides maybe last year, they've ever been. And I'm not going to sit here and say the committee got it right by any means, but I think that the 4 teams that were playing, the dumbest shit that I saw afterwards was immediately running to discount, like, this team shouldn't have been in because of this happening.
Well, let's talk about Georgia, Florida State, because I saw takes coming from all over the place on this one. Let's just talk through some of those. A lot of people mad that Florida State calling them bad culture, quitters, because all their guys opted out.
Right.
Look, I don't know. Like, Chris, I know you obviously played competitive sports. I grew up playing competitive sports. When you're, especially, and also we got to change our mindset because we're 37 years old. We have probably a different take than when we were maybe 19, 20.
Yeah.
But if you go out and you fight through adversity, just like Bama went through, you had multiple games, big moments in the season. You went undefeated, and it is so hard to go undefeated, no matter what conference you're in.
Yep.
And basically a group of people says, you know what, even through all that, we don't think your team is good enough because you don't have your quarterback. Then there's nothing left to play for, in my opinion.
I agree.
And think about it. Had all their players played and they beat Georgia, Florida State is not the type of school, just like Georgia's not, just like Bama's not, that's going to be like, well, we win. We're not UCF. We're not going to claim a national championship. That's lame. So
Right.
people that are like, you couldn't claim no, it's not going to happen. We're not going to do that. So the best thing you do is you go undefeated and you beat a Georgia team, which clearly looks probably like the best team in the country still, you know. So I hate the takes of like this is all about bad culture. They boycotted the game in their own way. They could have just said, look, we're going to boycott the game totally. We're not going to show up. But their way of doing that was all their best players said, fuck this. We're not going to be a part of it. You've already told us we're not good enough, so we're done. We're looking on to other things.
Yeah.
And it turned into a lot of like, well, this is why, you know, and I get it. Like Georgia, like the fact that all their players played basically that had like NFL futures and weren't injured, like didn't have a ton of like important opt-outs. Like I think that is commendable, especially in a game that doesn't make sense. But
yeah, go ahead.
But you know, Kirby made a good point. He said, we got to, after the game, he's like, clearly their roster affected this game.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, they have a good football program. They had a really good year this year. And those kids, basically the second and third stringers that had no chance in this game from basically the kickoff, because let's be very clear, I'm not using the opt-out as an excuse as why it was 63-3.
Yeah.
But I am saying, I get it. Georgia had a lot of opt-outs too, and they played their second and third stringers. You know, their second and third stringers are better than everyone else's second stringers in the country.
Yeah.
And Florida State won 5 games 2 years ago. Their roster is not there yet.
Forget about that. Like that. It's a phenomenal, like starting 22. They did. They were great, but like,
they didn't have the depth.
Not there.
And so, I thought the tweet that kind of summarized it the best was this guy from Louisville that covers them. He says, it's kind of amazing in some folks' eyes, FSU isn't the FSU from the first 12 games if Jordan Travis is gone. But this Florida State team minus 40 players is an exposure of the Florida State team that we watched all season. Because you saw people like, this is why Florida State didn't get in, or Florida State needs to stop bitching. Like they're obviously they never would have done anything. It's like, you're not having an honest argument if that's your argument.
I don't know if I'm being a prisoner of the moment here, but I genuinely feel this way this morning as we're recording this. I don't think I've ever seen a stretch of worse, lazy, dumbass fucking takes when it came to this game, these two teams, and in the Rose Bowl with Alabama and all of it like individually and all tying it together. Because one thing I hate about like just sports media now and what's successful is the more incendiary a take is, like the more hot, like, you know, like controversial, the more dumb shit you say, like the more screen time and airtime you're going to get. It's the only reason why FS1 I think is even fucking like a viable option to have any kind of programming that's not live sports. They say the dumbest shit on there and it's like, and people overreact to it. And then one thing about social media is that it's always people have a very hard time separating like, hey, you said this, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but also since that's not where my thought is. Here's the best example. When people say on Twitter, "Oh, I really like apples," and then somebody tweets back at them like, "Oh, so you fucking hate oranges?" Like, there's no better example of how like social media can work. And it was the weirdest thing to watch. Like, I knew it was coming, and FSU, again, I think they deserve to be in the playoff. I think they still would have lost to Michigan. I think they deserve to at least have the chance to lose to Michigan. I'm happy my team got in. I can only say it so many times. Mm-hmm. Also, this whole idea of like, you know, they should have played this game to prove a point. That's your opinion of some people. Like that's fine. Mm-hmm. That's fine to have. But to not understand why they wouldn't want to, and to label this team as like they quit and they were, you know, bitching about like real champions would have if they were, you know, competitors. You want to prove it on the field. Like Steak Shapiro said some fucking dumbass shit. So like about how like you want to prove your prowess. They proved their prowess in the 13 fucking games they already played to get here. Now all of that is true, and I fully understand why they boycotted the game or left, like whether it was NFL draft, whether it was like transfer portal, what the fuck ever. Because you said it best. The committee told you unless you play for the SEC or ACC or Big Ten, you don't matter. And I would be really frustrated. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids that like like you run on emotions there.
Yep.
It was a nightmare scenario for them. All of that is true and can be true. And another thing can be true, which is this is the worst possible fucking matchup they could have ever been given, because
Right.
this is not a difference in cultures, but Georgia is a really, really good culture that Kirby Smart has built. And the moment they announced that game, it was like, oh man, yeah, I think that Georgia coming off a loss and being 29-1 over the last few years, they are going to be, the way that he runs that program, a team that's going to want to prove something. And
Yep.
and like,
And Carson Beck's coming back next year, so he's going to be playing the game, and like
right.
I've seen the list that Georgia fans are throwing out. Well, these are all the guys that opted out for us, and it's like, great, yeah. And all your other like superstar players that you had all year outside of Bowers are all playing in the game.
Well, and here's the thing too, Tyler.
And all their backups are 5 stars.
Right. And all of that being said, the bottom line, regardless of any of that, is that Georgia's also a much better team than FSU.
Yeah. We knew
that's
that
okay to
going
say.
into the game. Yeah.
Going into that game. Like, I don't know what would have happened if both teams were fully healthy, and we're not going to ever know.
Georgia still would have won.
Yeah, sure.
Even if Travis played, I think Georgia still would have won.
Sure. But like the whole like dick measuring contest about like the portal and who opted out, that was super weird. I thought that like the moment this game was announced, it was the worst possible scenario for Florida State to go into. And again, give credit to Kirby Smart for what he's been able to do to build that culture, because I think he is right. Again, two things can be true at the same time. But like this idea that no one else does it. Bama did it last year. They had 3 top 12 picks that played in a meaningless Sugar Bowl. But I thought this was a bad situation going for Florida State, because they were the talent differential, the overall mood of the program going in,
the emotions.
And if there's a guy that's going to prove a point more than anyone, if there's a person that's going to prove a point more than anyone else in the country, it's Kirby Smart.
Yep.
And like, I don't think he ran up the score at all.
I don't either. Now, when they're having Muschamp's kid drop back, I'm like, all right, let's fucking put this dude in the dirt. But no, I totally, actually, I'm totally with you there. Like, I thought Kirby he could have named the score, honestly. Yeah. And but also the fact that he went out his way after the game to be like, I hurt for those kids in that locker room because, and there's something wrong with, like, we need to fix, like, he uses an opportunity to fix the overall total game of college football. Yeah. Or at least try to give his opinion. And I thought that was
what he was trying to do. I think the point he was actually trying to prove, because I think he was trying to prove a point, was that this does need to be fixed. He said it directly after the game. This needs to be fixed. And I don't think he would have done anything to embarrass the program or shut on Mike Norvell or whatever. I think that they had something to prove to themselves, the way that team ended the season, and they did. And like, listen, Georgia has lost 2 games in 3 years and is still a elite program and all that kind of stuff, and will be in contention again next year. That's all great. I did a deep dive on some of the numbers from their 3-year stretch. We'll get into, I mean, at some point. Actually, I'll just get into it now. The 3-year stretch they've had. So 42-2 overall over the last 3 years, Tyler. 36-0 in the regular season. They had 29 consecutive wins. Of those 42 total wins, 36 were by 10-plus points, 29 were by 20-plus points, and 17 were by 30-plus. You had almost 70% of your wins were by 20-plus points in that stretch, Tyler. They were 16-2 against top 25 teams. Their average margin of victory against ranked opponents was 27 points. They averaged 38.9 points per game against top 25 teams. And then against top 10 teams, they were 9-2. Looking at what they did in the postseason, they were 6-2 overall, 5-0 in bowl games. Their average margin of victory in bowl games was plus 31.2. They were 4-0 in the college football playoff. In the conference, in the SEC, they went 26-2, 18-0 versus the SEC East. Again, undefeated in the regular season. Against their rivals during the last 3 years, they are 12-0 with an average margin of victory of 23 points. Tennessee, Georgia Tech, Florida, and Auburn, they beat all 4 of those teams by at least 21 points or more. It has been a phenomenal 3 years, maybe the best we've ever seen from a SEC team at any point in history. Now, I say all that to say, incredible game. They're an incredible team, and they may they may still be the most talented team with the most upside and potential to win a national championship if they got in the playoff. This whole idea that I saw from the lazy takes that as it like pertained to my team. Well, Jalen Miller only threw for 116 yards. My quarterback could have done that. So and so could have done that. We should have put this team in. Well, here's the thing. Your team fucking lost to him. Your team, I understand that this year was tough because you could have made a good case for 6 teams to fit into 4 spots. And I get that. But this idea of after watching Alabama lose in the Rose Bowl, if you're a person that decided to use that loss as a foundation for an argument of my team would have beat Michigan, your team lost to the team that lost to Michigan.
And that was my thing too. The same type of argument. They were like, well, Georgia felt like they got snubbed from the playoff too, and they didn't quit. It's like, did you guys realize that there's no actual – it's like the apples oranges thing again. It's like you guys lost going into the last weekend. We won, and we still got left out. Therefore, what else do you have to prove in an exhibition game?
So the thing that bothered me, the arguments that I hated the most –
the arguments aren't the same.
They're not the same at all. They're not the same at all. And like I saw it over and over and over again, and I'm just going to call it out. I know that a lot of people, probably even a lot of our listeners, have this opinion. This idea that, oh, if that was me, I would want to prove this, and I saw like people taking that shot constantly. If it was me, I would have done this. Listen, here's the deal. What you're actually let's break down what you're actually saying. Listen, I know I'm 40 and I don't play sports in college right now. Maybe I never even did. But in this situation that I've made up in my own head, right, not only would I have done this and be the hero to my own story that's not real, but I would have done I'm so morally sound. I'm so competitive. I would have done this. You know what? You never had the fucking chance to do that. And also, it's so easy to sit here and say like, oh, my God, I would have done this. Well, shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up about this whole bullshit keyboard bravado of this is the kind of person I would be. That's the kind of competitor I would have done this. You don't fucking know that. I say this all the time. We don't argue about hypotheticals unless it's about Alabama. But like that is the dumbest, lamest shit that I saw all fucking weekend from people shitting on these kids who, by the way, for the kids that opted out, who had nothing to play for. Sadly enough, they had nothing to play for apparently all season, Tyler, the way the committee treated them. So, yeah, why would they not? Like, what? Two things can be true at the same time. Georgia, tip of the cap for you guys, like playing the game. Florida State, I hate it for you. And I get it. I'm not going to sit here and shit on you for that. But the last thing I'll say about this whole thing, I knew that it was going to come from. I knew that these two fan bases were going to have some comments about the Rose Bowl because they could have done we would have done this. Here's the bottom line. You could have made the case for 6 teams. But if you find yourself enjoying somebody that I enjoy when Georgia loses, admittedly. I do. Because just the nature of that rivalry in quotes. But if I would have gone on Twitter, Tyler, after Bama lost to Texas, if a month later, when Texas lost to Oklahoma, I would make the claim that Bama could have beat Oklahoma. This is pathetic. Blah, blah. Do you see how fucking stupid that sounds? Do you see how fucking insane you would have to be to say, hey, the team that my team lost to just got beat? And somehow, in my mind, that makes me think that we could beat the team that beat them. You couldn't beat them. And if you think Jalen Miller was mid or he sucked and they couldn't do this and that, the offensive line was so bad, you had a chance to prove it. And I heard your players, your coaches, and all your fans very loudly tell me exactly what they were going to do. And they didn't.
Right. No, look, I mean, I was getting the same way over the weekend. By the way, best feature that I didn't know Twitter had is muting all notifications of people either liking or responding to you that you don't follow.
Yeah.
It's the best because I don't see any of the just grime that comes up when you just try to tweet something and it's like 63-3, bitch, cope with that. And it's like, okay, so now this is the only reason I hate that this game went this way is because if you ever try to say something nice about your own school, someone's going to just come into your comments and be like, yeah, but 63-3 Cope. It's like, okay, yeah, this was all real. This was like I'm sure you'll always remember the 2023 Orange Bowl. The great culture off where nobody's going to remember this game in a week. That's the problem with it.
Right.
Nobody
that
cares.
Is actually very fair.
Nobody cares.
I will say this too. Like I love winning, and I want like be able to win like national titles. And I understand this is the first time in 15 years that they went for a 3-year stretch without winning one. And Georgia's got 2 in the last 3 years. But I tell you what, man, Rose Bowl bummed me out. You know, it really doesn't bum me out. And like the measure of success. I saw Georgia fans saying this the other day about how imagine losing two games in a season in back-to-back years. Buddy, y'all did that for 40 fucking years in a row. For 40 fucking years in a row. And I get, listen, like the Natties, like you guys have one of the best programs in the country. And before this year, you were the best program in the country. You're not now. Do you know why that is? It's because you lost to Alabama again. Yeah. So enjoy the loss because you should. Because like I love when the Yankees lose. I love when Tennessee loses. We're all fans. I get it. I listen. There's a lot of Georgia fans that listen to this podcast that I genuinely love talking to about football and like respect and all that kind of stuff. And I respect the shit out of that program. But just like they would, pull against Bama, like of course we're all fans. So yeah, I'm sad about the Rose Bowl. But the moment I saw my mentions being flooded with Georgia fans, I was like, we ended your season a month ago. All right, what else we got? Do you want to get into the rest of these?
So let's talk about Cotton Bowl, Missouri with the 14-3 win over Ohio State.
Yeah.
What was that? Did it end up being 0-0 at half? What was the score at halftime?
No, Ohio State. Oh my God, this pissed me off so much. Ohio State. So this was the lock of the year for me with picks. My picks were up and down for bowl season. But I had Missouri to score first, and I had Missouri first half because they had not trailed in the first half at any game this season. It was one of the worst officiated games, especially for the first half that I've ever seen. Like Mizzou got screwed over repeatedly. And at one point, Ohio State kicked a field goal to score first. And then Mizzou, they recovered a fumble inside of the 10-yard line. And it was the weirdest thing because somebody comes on and hits the quarterback. He fumbles, and the ball just lays there. And a Missouri player standing over picks it up and hands it to the official. And one of the refs comes in and it's going, he's down. And then somebody else, I guess whoever's in charge, on the mic goes, the ruling in the field was a fumble from the quarterback, but recovered by the offense. And then I was like, what? So then they didn't review it. It was clearly a fumble. He never recovered it at all. Everything they said from every angle was wrong. Every single possible, mind-blowing. And that was the last they scored. Now, listen, Ohio State had a lot of opt-outs too, and whatever. Yeah. I kept saying this was the best.
Colored me shocked that Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't play in this game. Leading up to the game, it's like, oh, he's been working out with the team. He's not decided if he's cut. He might come back to Ohio State. He's not coming back to Ohio State.
No, there's no reason to. But I mean, and that's not. This isn't shitting on Ohio State because they're a very good football team. But going into this season or bowl season, I remember I told you, I was like, there's not a better situation or setup for a team with a lot to prove versus a team with nothing to prove than this one. And listen, Mizzou ends the season with 11 wins. It's the third time they've done that in the last 11 years. Incredible season from Drinkwitz. I thought this was so I felt like they had a really good chance to take advantage of this opportunity, and they did. And 14-3, it was a pretty miserable game to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, great.
But it was tip of the cap to them. Speaking of 11 wins, no, that's not where I was going to go with that.
I was like, where are we going with that?
Ole Miss. So the Peach Bowl. I thought that this was kind of cool because people from the outside, one of the lazy takes with the SEC is that it's Bama and Georgia and everyone else riding their coattails. And this year, the SEC with Ole Miss beating Penn State finished with 4 different teams with 11 wins. And I was like, has that ever happened before? That seems like a lot. And I asked Connor about it. And he's like, I don't think the Big Ten's done it. The Big Ten has had like 3, it's seemingly almost every year for like a decade, it feels like. But the SEC had 4 different teams with 11 wins, which, fun fact, there has been another time that's like another conference has accomplished that. It just happens to also be the SEC. They've done it now 5 times since 2011. They've had 4 teams with 11 or more wins. So incredible job. Like in a down year for the conference, which a lot of people, including us, said, a pretty incredible stretch there. Back to the Ole Miss part of it. I said this before the game. I thought Ole Miss would win, but I thought SEC fans would be shocked about how physically challenging Penn State was going to be in the trenches. And they got the ball out of the gates and ran it down Ole Miss's throat. This was a fun game. This is a fun game. Like, we kept saying how confused we were that Penn State was somehow favored with the people they had missing. Very good back and forth game, especially in the first half or so. I thought this was awesome to watch, man. The fact, like, again, you love to see people cash in on opportunities when they are presented with them. Lane Kiffin being able to win a game against a top 10 team that has been this vaunted defense. Ole Miss put up 540 yards and 38 points. It was the most points and total yards that Penn State has allowed to anyone all season. I think they've only given up over 20 points, I think, once, like all year. Incredible job from Ole Miss, especially early when things weren't working and they had to fight through it.
Yeah. And, we talked about momentum going into the offseason.
Man.
Their portal season, plus you got Jackson Dartfish who says he's coming back. You've got another year of Quinshon Judkins. I believe Trey Harris, who had 135 yards in this game, and Caden Prescorn, the tight end that had a really good game, are both gone. But they're going to have a lot of weapons, a remade defense, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're one of the most hyped teams going into preseason next year. By the way, speaking of cashing in on opportunities, how about Kiffin's girlfriend? Do you see him post the picture?
On the field with the caption that said 38.
She's a student?
She's 25.
Huh.
I think.
Good for him.
It said 38-25 was the caption he posted, like, because that was the score of the game. One of the best comments I've seen maybe all year on Twitter. Somebody responded immediately with 48-25 next to it. Yeah, good for Kiffin, man. He keeps winning. That'll be really interesting. I think that's going to be a very, very hyped team next year. And I will tell you right now, prediction, I think that they're going to be good. This better not turn into like I feel like it's already going to turn into, if they somehow don't like win the SEC or get 10 wins or whatever, people are going to say that this is, we always say Ole Miss is going to do this and then they always fall apart. Like, what's kind of crazy about this is the first 11-win season in Ole Miss history. And they're going into a season next year. I don't know if you've seen their schedule, but all things considered, it is very manageable compared to
not like Florida's.
Not even close. Yeah. It is. Like, I don't want to say it's like easy because like with everything, like, there's not an easy SEC schedule in the conference, but like it is very, very manageable. Like, they lose Bama off that schedule. I believe they still have Georgia, which is interesting, and I think they get Oklahoma as well. But like, the non-con schedule is pretty easy. Like, they are on paper, like, I mean, not sound like Dabo, but like, buy your stock.
Yeah, no doubt. Some other highlights in bowl season. Oregon, I mean, we're not gonna break that down, but they just destroyed Liberty 45-6. Really good year. I mean, it's crazy. Their only 2 losses are both to Washington. Like, that just Washington just had an incredible year. But Oregon's going to be another team that's going to be hot going into next year. They got Dylan Gabriel coming in. They also got Dante Moore waiting in the wings. So, and the portal still has to play out because now, as we're in the middle of bowl season, the NCAA changed the rules about being able to just basically transfer whenever you want. It doesn't matter. You can transfer multiple times. So there's going to be a whole new round of guys that are going into the portal after this season, bowl season. So we'll see what happens there.
And also, pretty like, it's already a destination school, I feel like, for a lot of recruits because of Nike and the uniforms, all that kind of stuff. But like, regardless if this is fair or not, like now they're leaving the Pac-12 and going into the Big Ten, which is going to be like obviously like they have a national footprint from coast to coast, and it will be national games on CBS. Like there's even more selling points for Oregon now, and I think Dan Lanning has gotten like he's got that thing trending very, very up.
Yeah. Iowa didn't score any points. I had the under 36 in that game.
It was 35, right?
35-0.
The numbers on so there were some fascinating lines that came out with some of these games.
And Tennessee was about to score at the very end too. They were trying to run it in.
Tennessee first half money line I thought was one of the easier bets because Tennessee has a good defense and Iowa's offense is I don't get
Iowa's offense is just
it's so bad. It's so bad. And then you find out Tennessee is actually starting with
how do they win 10 games with that offense?
Okay, so I don't want to revert back to my old ways and turn back into like a Big Ten slanderer, but I've got some numbers that I need to share with you.
Okay.
One, kudos to Tennessee. Great job with a true freshman quarterback and like good win against again 10-win Big Ten championship participant team. They were ranked. Here's a fun fact for you, Tyler. Iowa played 3 ranked teams all year. Do you want to guess how many points total they scored in those 3 games?
10.
0. They lost 31-0 to Penn State. They lost 26-0 to Michigan, and they lost 35-0 to Tennessee.
My God.
A game that we didn't mention, but it's worth mentioning. That was actually a really good finish was LSU and Wisconsin. LSU's defense, they did what they've done all year and just let Wisconsin run all over them early on. It was like they were up 14-0. At one point, I think they were down 28-14. They come storming back. Nussmeier looked kind of shaky early, but he I think he had an interception. Ends up passing for like 300-something yards. But I bring that up because of one thing. So LSU beats Washington. Ole Miss beats Penn State. Mizzou beats Ohio State. Tennessee beats Iowa. Those are all ranked teams. Those are 4 ranked teams, right? Now Bama lost to Michigan for sure, and Maryland fucking skull dragged Auburn, which was ridiculous. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Can we get into the topic about Hugh Freeze basically like admitting that he just like punted on games this season? Like, it's probably not going to matter in the long term, especially if they keep recruiting the way that they're starting to. But that's a weird thing to say. Like, that didn't really put much time into this. Like, you are paid to be the head coach.
Let's address that. Mike Giddens from War Report at Auburn asked the question after this game. They got fucking destroyed. It was
31-13. Not even that close.
31-13. They scored a touchdown late. They were down 21-0 out of the gates against a backup quarterback. They were a touchdown favorite. Their fans took over the city of Nashville, all that kind of shit. I think what I was most shocked about, and maybe I shouldn't because I'm the one that always says they're too stupid to insult. They're always going to find some positive silver lining. When he was asked about his reaction to the game plan today, the offensive game plan, and what went wrong, because Mike was, kind of like addressing like, hey, like Mike he's been openly said and followed through on like holding Hugh's feet to the fire on a couple of things like quarterback development, because that's what he prided himself on in his own press conference, and that's what it's like his track record's been. And like you got to hold people accountable. And so he asked the question about the game plan, the offensive game plan, and I know that Auburn doesn't have a lot of people there, and the cupboard's bare, all that kind of stuff. But at some point, you have to look at your coach, who, by the way, has had instant success at every other stop. Ole Miss had 1 SEC win in the 2 years combined before he got there. They had 3 their first year, and they went to a bowl game. Arkansas State, they had a 10-win season his first year. They hadn't had a 10-win season since 1995. Like, he's done that everywhere he's gone. And at the very least, they've had tremendous offensive success. At some point, the excuses have to stop. And like, I know that the cupboard wasn't full, but to ask a head coach in the SEC what his involvement or what he thought about the game plan, and his response to be, I wasn't really involved in the game plan, to be honest. I didn't really focus on this game because I was focused on recruiting and that like building for next year.
By the way, I think that's probably the case for most first-year coaches that were in bowls this year, but you can't just admit that publicly.
Signing day ended a week and a half before he said that.
And that's fair too, but then you got the portal.
Sure. But the hay's in the barn for most of those people. And
but what I'm saying is even if that is the case, like there's times where you can be brutally honest and times where you may want to just kind of like not be brutally honest.
Maybe be a part of the game plan for the fucking New Mexico State game, right? Like instead of only planning for Bama, like most of you have heard. And in this case, like credit to Auburn fans for defending him, but like, man, what probably would have also been a good thing to do, Hugh, is game plan for a 7-5 Maryland team who didn't have their starting quarterback, the all-time Big Ten leading passer, and then go win a bowl game and have a winning season instead of having a third straight losing season. I just thought that was like the weirdest fucking thing to say out loud. And maybe it is something that's more prevalent at a lot of schools. I don't know. And I do think that Auburn obviously is clearly trending in the right direction, and he's done a tremendous job recruiting. But it almost spoke to like it was like a perfect example of what the fan base has been so loud about for the last 2 months, which is, listen, I know that we lost in Ohio State. I know that we lost in horrific fashion against Alabama in a game we should have won. By the way, the reason they didn't is because of coaching. And then I know we probably should have been prepared and not gotten our ass like kicked by Maryland in the bowl game. But man, these recruits, did you see these 17, 18-year-old kids we're bringing in for next year? It was the perfect, like the quote was the embodiment of that, their fans' attitude over the last 2 months. So listen, they're happy with it. That's all you can ask for. It's not, maybe it's just not my place to judge. I would be upset if my coach said that.
Yeah, I would too. All right. Well, anything else you wanted to cover? I mean, obviously there were some other smaller games.
Yeah. Clemson won again. So that was something. I feel like there's probably some other games that were good. Arizona, Oklahoma was pretty fun. I don't even know what else. It was a fun into the bowl season.
LSU, Wisconsin. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier had almost 400 yards passing. Tanner Mordecai was really good in that game too, 375. But even with Malik Neighbors only playing half the game, he was able to put almost 400 yards of passing yards. Defense still sucks. Producer Dan's still angry with the defensive coordinator.
I don't know how Matt has his job. And also, I tweeted this out, like, I would give almost anything if they would have. So they need to start making these bowl games like stop having conference size. Stop give the fans what they want and create like the best storylines you can. For instance, LSU versus Iowa would have been a tremendous storyline. Like watching Brian Ferentz and his fucking offense go against this Matt House defense would have been awesome. That game, the only other thing I had was
Arizona, Oklahoma. You watched that? That was a great game.
I did.
Shout out 10 wins this year.
Yeah. No, so I thought this was interesting yesterday. And again, the SEC is not going to play for a national championship for the first time in 10 years, and only the second time, I think, in the last 17 or 18 years. But I thought this was really, really surprising, specifically in these games against with these bigger, brand Big Ten teams that have been. One thing the Big Ten fans say all the time is that the SEC is propped up by the media, and the other reason they have these ranked wins or these teams ranked is because the strength of schedule is a lie. They give them too much credit, and that's why blah blah blah. Michigan, Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State were all ranked in the top 17 going into bowl season. 3 of them were in the top 10 and had been for the entire year. And you want to talk about getting propped up because of your fucking blue blood status from things that were accomplished 30 to 80 years ago? The Big Ten came into into bowl games with 4 of the top 5 defenses in terms of yards per game allowed. They came into the bowl game or bowl season with the top 4 overall scoring defense in the entire country. The top 4 defenses in terms of points per game allowed were all from the Big Ten. And then Wisconsin was 17th. Wisconsin was a top 20 scoring defense as well. And they came into the games with those very high, we thought, deserved rankings. Then you look at what the games against SEC teams. Ohio State scored 3 points. It's the fewest points they've scored in a single game in 7 years against Missouri. There's one. Wisconsin played LSU. Wisconsin gave up the most. They had the 17th ranked scoring defense in the country coming in. They gave up the most yards and most points they allowed all season to LSU. Penn State was ranked in the top 3 in every defensive category, it seemed like. They gave up the most points and the most yards to any team that they've given up to all season against Ole Miss. Iowa, most points they've allowed all season. Every which way you look at it from those games, embarrassingly and drastically different than the stats that were put up with them all year. So I just thought that was really interesting.
What do you think about I don't know, I mean, obviously Cannell is trying to stir the pot all the time on Twitter, but what do you think about his idea? I don't know if it's his idea, but he was talking about it, of putting bowl season at the beginning of the season.
No, I think that's stupid. I don't. You know what? Honestly, man, I hate to sound like a fucking get off my lawn, old head, whatever you want to say, but I would like to just have some, like, maybe we take a break from changing everything about the fucking sport.
Yeah, I just don't know how you ever make the bowl games a thing anymore.
But
that are important to people, because you're listening to these stats, like, yeah, this is the worst that they did all year, this is the best they did all year, but it's like, I don't even know how to compare that because it's not the same. You don't know what motivation levels are there. You don't know opt-outs, injuries. So it's just like, I'd love for these games to actually mean something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally fair. I think it's totally fair, and like these are just statistical facts.
Right.
I'm not even trying to make a statement like when they played the SEC, because again, like I said, Maryland beat Auburn, and like Bama got beat by Michigan, and the SEC is not going to play for the national championship. But you talk about playing in the middle of the season. I thought this was one of the best bowl seasons I've watched in forever, especially the last week or so of it. Like super competitive college football playoff. A lot of the NY6 games besides yours, I thought was decent, right? Well, I guess maybe there were some that weren't as.
I mean, Missouri, Ohio State was not a great watch, but yeah.
I don't know how you make that matter more or whatever to like for some of the opt-outs. I don't know what the answer is to that, but like bottom line is like you talk about, like, I don't know how you would do an early season bowl games, but these end up just being non-conference exhibition games. And I think if you approach it like that and you like it's not the end of the world if you lose a bowl game at all.
Right.
I think that like leaning into the idea of, hey, let's see what kind of like younger starters and recruits or whatever, like how they look and the future being bright. I think like you just have to, at some point, I think we'll finally be used to how bowl season is becoming. I don't think it could be worse. So I think once we used to, because people, listen, there's fucking 40 something bowls. And the only reason there are is because they're still making money and they're still, being watched and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know how to tell you how to make Ohio and or like Georgia Tech and UCF matter to everyone, but I also don't know how to explain to you like why it fucking like I'm going to be invested and watch it just because I'm a college football fan.
Yeah, and gambling. Gambling does keep most things alive.
Yeah.
Or have them slowly die inside.
What was your? Well, let's end with this. What was your?
So yesterday I went 2-2. I took Alabama money line. Because once it went to 2.5, that did scare me, but I also got like decent odds on family straight up.
Yeah.
I won the Oregon Liberty game.
Yeah, I crushed that one.
Yeah, I won the Washington. I took Washington +4, and the other one I lost was, what was the first game? What was the one that was 8? Oh, LSU. Yeah, I had them 8.5.
I had Nussmeier over 1.5 touchdowns. I had what's the receiver's name? I fuck up this every single Brian
Thomas.
Yeah. I had him over 60.5 receiving yards, and I didn't take them to cover anything. I just had them teased down with other games. I did miss, I think, Malik Neighbors anytime touchdown score there. Tennessee, I had Tennessee to score first, and Tennessee win the first half because Iowa just was not going to score first. I thought nailed that one. That was really the only score first prop that I hit. It felt like all bowl season. So I got both of those, had them tied into like up to money line and like teaser stuff that I posted, and then, dude, Oregon was good because this was a situation where you could live bet because they were losing it in the first quarter, but like had them. What was it? I had them over 21 team total first half over 20.5 points. Had them winning the first half, covering 8. What was it? There was something else that I hit too, but it might have been like, I don't remember what it was. I hit 4 picks in that one, though the full game line at 16.5. Yeah, so I hit all those, and then Bama, the one I was pretty confident in, I thought was going to be good. Bama, Michigan first score field goal. I thought that was like a really underrated bet, and it didn't hit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one game left.
Mm-hmm.
We will preview that at our next episode. But for now, that's going to be the end of the show. As always, we really appreciate you guys listening to the show. Don't forget, it's a new year. We need new reviews, new 5-star reviews. So if you go to Apple and Spotify, leave us those reviews. That would be great. We will, as always, read them on air. And there were a handful of voicemails, but that kind of trailed off. We didn't really promote that too much. But we will obviously. I don't know how much we'll do it throughout the season. Maybe we'll make some judgments on that going forward. But, it's always going to be open, 770-674-8233. And don't forget to check out the videos and clips from the show on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and obviously our YouTube page. So we really appreciate you guys tuning in. And we look forward to previewing the national championship game between Michigan and Washington. So Chris, I'm Tyler.
Real quick, Tyler, let's do this for the national championship. Because we're not going to be invested into it with our teams. Let's do it like we did with the Super Bowl, like prop bets, and just do a deep dive into that.
Okay. Yeah, love that.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.